Sunday, July 13th, 1918. The motor racing public of Great Britain and the world converge on the picturesque Kentish circuit of Brands Hatch. The occasion, the 33rd running of the British Grand Prix. For the sponsors and manufacturers of all motoring goods, this represents a unique opportunity of displaying their wares over 2 days of practice and race day itself. Crowds totaling 120,000 pass through the turnstiles and surge through the various walkways and past pavilions selling everything from hats to umbrellas. The day has all the feel of a day at the fair, but the thrills and spills are only too realistic. The Grand Prix is not the only event on the day's menu. The crowds have Formula 3 and the 6th round of the very popular 1980 Tri-Central British Saloon Car Championship. It is with this last race of the day that the ordinary motorist can identify with most. For two legendary figures of the circuit will be on the grid, Stirling Moss and Jack Brabham. And the cars themselves are only slightly modified production saloon models, such as Rover, Capri, Fiesta, Audi, Mini, Sirocco and Mazda. The cars are split into 4 classes, ranging from 1300cc to 3500cc, and have provided some of the most exciting racing of the season for their fans. In the B class, 1600cc to 2300cc, one team has led the way all season. Grand Prix Day is the day to underline their superiority in that class before an enormous crowd. The 2.3 Mazda RX7 cars, run by Tom Walkinshaw's TWR Mazda Motorsport team, generously sponsored by Pentax, lead the field. The TWR Mazda Motorsport racing paddock looks relaxed after the 2 days' practice that have gone extremely well. Tom has every reason to be relaxed as he chats to John Radden, manager of Pentax sponsorship. Mazda's Roger Payne and drivers Win Percy and Hugo Tippett discuss the day's prospects. David Palmer, Mazda PR and competitions chief, who himself regularly drives his products in motorsport events, looks suitably confident. While the preparations continue in the TWR Pentax Pavilion, we asked #1 driver Win Percy the time-honored question, what do you think of it so far?
Well, today we're on to round 6. We've already competed 5 rounds of the championship. We're very fortunate. We've had 5 wins and the fastest lap in each round, which gives us 10 points per round so far, which is maximum points. Yes, it's been going very, very well.
A modest Win Percy, first in the class by a long way, and with 50 points, first overall too. In 8th place overall and second in the class is the Mazda RX7 driven by John Morrison. The mechanics' discussion on successful practice times prompted the question, what of today's race and the weather?
What do you feel about today?
Well, the forecast is rain. Personally, I would like it to rain because the car in the wet is a beautifully balanced little car, and we have got a slight oversteer problem, and in the dry we get a bit of a problem. Brands does make the problem a little worse, more so than Silverstone, circuits like that. So from my point of view, I'm looking forward to some rain, but otherwise no mechanical problems at all in practice.
Saturday's 2 qualifying bursts, each half an hour of hard driving, had guaranteed good positions on the grid for Win and his 2 colleagues in the RX7s, Philip Bullman and Hugo Tippett. Win with a practice time of 1 minute 44.074 seconds on the 3rd row, behind some of the more powerful Capris and Rovers. With 3 cars in the race, the TWR mechanics have their work cut out to ready the cars for the driver's demands and the management's requests. In saloon car racing, the cars are the basic motorist models, modified within the strictest confines and altered only where the rightly enforced safety standards are required. As such, mechanics' detailed work cannot be underestimated, and every component has to be fitted, checked and retested after the severe bedding down of the practice laps. Prior to the race, the mechanics can only guess as to the conditions their cars are likely to be racing in. After practice, virtually the whole engine has to be checked and set up. Then the wheels, tires, suspension and interior vigorously cleaned and inspected. Exterior and interior, the team are always aware of their image, presented to the public. As such, their pride demands that each car should be turned out as good-looking as a thoroughbred racehorse. Apart from the public, the sponsors quite rightly require their cars to be in tip-top condition before the official scrutineer will pass the cars ready and cleared for competition. For manufacturers, this can be a useful opportunity to show off some of their latest models. For Mazda, for instance, their elegant RX7 model can be admired by present and prospective customers. Lunch over, the spectators can ready themselves in their various ways. Some relaxing, the connoisseur chauffeur-driven, cameramen checking their shots, and one of the crowd checking hers. The world television networks prepare for transmission. The start of the Grand Prix is imminent, and the spectators are taking up every conceivable viewpoint. Whilst in the grandstand itself, there isn't a spare seat to be had. They await the ear-shattering roar of the 24 starters on the 76-lap race. Nearly 200 miles to go at an average speed of 125 miles per hour. Alan Jones in the Williams car was desperate to win here in front of what he considers is his home crowd. For although Australian, he learnt most of his driving in this country and is currently World Championship points leader. The story of the race was the old one of dependability over sheer speed, and an even older one of tyre problems. For both Lafitte and Pironi in their Ligiers were forced to retire following punctures, leaving Alan Jones to take the checkered flag. 13 finishers, with Nelson Piquet and the Brabhams sandwiched in second place between Jones and Reutemann, a 1-3 for Frank Williams, and for Alan Jones, an ambition realized. This has been the year of Alan Jones and the Saudia Williams team, for he now is, of course, the 1980 world champion and a very worthy and popular champion. As the crowd still applauded, the weather remained mercifully dry. But with attention now focusing on the saloon car race, as the cars left the paddock, rain was in the air. The first Mazda RX7 car, number 20, driven by class and championship leader Win Percy, makes its way to the track. Next, car 21, driven by Philip Bullman, a relative newcomer to this class of saloon car racing, but coping well. Finally, for Mazda, car 22, driven by Hugo Tippett, again relatively inexperienced, but benefiting from a drive today. With the Grand Prix winner still being driven around the track, the 38 starters in this 6th round of the championship make their way toward the pits. But already the threatened rain had arrived in earnest. But as Philip Bullman and Win Percy ready themselves, the question uppermost in their minds must have been, what tyres? The question was also in the minds of Tom Walkinshaw and his chief mechanic, whilst David Palmer obviously had something on his mind. Others had decided.
Jack's on wets. Something's up. Jack's on wets.
So Jack Brabham in the Gordini was on wets. So too were the 3 Mazdas, making hectic work for the team mechanics to swiftly change 12 tyres in a very short time. All round, other teams were hastily revising plans made earlier that day, to gamble on the weather clearing or not. Win Percy and Hugo Tippett are now to take their seats in unpracticed conditions, as the rain continued to fall. For some, the rain can bring distinct advantage in the mood of free enterprise or instant profit. But for those in the pits, it can cause the worrying thoughts of unpredictability and driver error that are, of course, part and parcel of the spectacle of the sport. The organizers, mindful of the fact that that very unpredictability can cause serious accidents and early stoppage of the race, decided to allow 3 more practice laps before the official warm-up lap, and then start. They were proved right, as there were numerous spins and problems on those 3 laps. Cars were in and out of the pits continuously with last-minute tuning and words of advice. The Mazda cars, now all shod with wets, whilst not exactly reveling in the conditions, were still performing well enough to ensure they're remaining confident of the outcome. So, with the rain still falling, the cars lined up on the grid for the official warm-up lap, minus only one entrant, Richard Lloyd, with the first of the 1.6 Audi 80s out with a dodgy gearbox. The front row of Capris took the gamble and remained on slicks, as did the Fiestas, Sterling Moss in the other Audi 80, and the rest of the Capris. Most others used wets, whilst Jeff Allen and Rex Greenslade in the two Rover V8s on the second row of the grid were shot with their Michelin intermediates. A possible trump card. All intact at the end of the warm-up lap, apart from Graham Good in another Capri. His handbrake had seized at the start of the warm-up lap, and by the time he'd got back to the grid, the field had upped and gone, leaving people all over the track. An unfortunate and unenforced retirement. The cars are manoeuvred into their grid positions yet again, but this time the race is to be on in earnest, and the last-minute queries and instructions are exchanged. The revs are kept nice and high, drivers determined to avoid the embarrassment of a stall on the line. The noise reverberates around the pits as the seconds tick away. A roar from the engines and crowd, and they're off. The excitement was there from the very start. Or as the two Capris slithered for grip, Allen in his big Rover dug the Michelins in and simply drove around them and set off at a furious pace. The second Rover was able to take advantage of a Capri half-spin and moved into third place, whilst Percy in the Mazda was up with the big boys at the end of the first lap, in an incredible fourth position. Already it was becoming apparent that those on slicks had made an error of judgment, as car after car roared past the grandstand, suffering from various degrees of body damage. Another Capri spin in front of the Rover relegated Greenslade to sixth position. And with the rain coming down harder still, the race was becoming a real battle. When Percy saw the Dolomites and Alpha Suds well down the field in his class, he certainly looked set for another class win, apart from his impressive overall position at the end of lap 5. Hugo Tippett had by now driven into the pits in the number 21 Mazda, his job well done in gaining vital points toward the manufacturer's title. Philip Bullman in car 22 was going well until he had a high speed coming together with Brian Muir in the third Rover V8 and had to retire prematurely with the front suspension knocked out of alignment. A portent perhaps of things to come. So it was car 20, the Mazda RX7 with no contest. Percy himself complaining it was a pig to drive in the wet, powering on lap after lap. In front, the tussle behind the all-conquering Rover of Jeff Allen continued at a hectic pace. Through lap after lap, the Gordon Spice Racing Team Capris swapped places with the second Rover of Rex Greenslade, while behind, 3 classes below, the 1300 Fiestas, Alpha Suds, Minis and friends fought it out amongst the battling babies. Mazda have raced in this British Saloon Car Championship for 7 seasons. Their very first year in 1974 was with the rotary-engined RX3 Coupe, which brought them 6 class wins and lap records. Since then, various rotary models have been seen on the UK circuits, always noisy and always very fast. Last year, the first in which Pentax Cameras sponsorship was obtained, saw the introduction of the new RX7, and it was driven by Tom Walkinshaw to a championship class victory, although only taking second place in the overall title. This season, Mazda intend to go one better. Winning a 10-race series during any season is not just achieved by building a fast car. To score points, the driver has to finish, and it is the reliability of the Mazda that has put it in such a commanding position. As each event has come and gone, the challenges of other manufacturers fell away, due to mechanical inconsistencies or driver error. But Win Percy has been able to take his victories in a calculated and quite clinical way, happy in the knowledge that the RX7 has never let him down. The Mazda rotary engine, which has an actual capacity of only 1150 cc, but is rated as double that by the world governing body of motorsport, the FISA, is producing around 220 brake horsepower in its British racing trim and regularly has to run at 9,000 revs per minute during the frenzy of racing. Yet, even with all this strain, not once this season has the whirling rotary given any indication of hesitation or failure. Even on this streaming wet Brands Hatch track, Percy is taking his car to the limit, slipping and sliding to the fastest lap in the class of 1 minute, 58.24 seconds, an average speed of 79.57 miles per hour.
Second of the Rovers, and it wrecks green slate. And facing the wrong way, and we've got a multiple here.
Yes, indeed, there'd been a shunt coming out of Westfield. Brian Muir's Rover had spun and finished up across the track. A Fiesta crashed into the barrier, and an unsighted Terry Watts and an Avenger crashed into the Rover. The race was stopped, and results stood on positions held at the end of lap 16. Fortunately, no one was hurt too badly, and Win Percy could coast into the pits in the class leader position he had maintained throughout the race, with this reaction to the crash.
The Yogi Bear is on slicks. Has spun off and taken, I think, a Sirocco, but an Avenger. It's a very bad accident, actually. They're blocking the track, and I think it's 3 right. It's a very bad accident.
Was doing really well, and he pushed him off.
Well, the car's okay. We set it up harder so that we could compete with the oversteer we had. But of course, on wet, you want to go softer. So the decision to go wet was on the grid, so it was too late. And I'm afraid it handles like a pig. That's why I let the bigger stuff go, because the class was secure. It wasn't worth risking the car. It was very good. I really don't know, actually. I got the class anyway. Somewhere about 7th, I would think. We'll have to do. Oh no, the car's okay.
The 4 races after the Grand Prix brought the Pentax Mazda RX7 4 more wins and 4 more fastest laps. An absolute 100% record for the season, underlining the superb reliability and bringing Win Percy the British Saloon Car Championship and Mazda the Manufacturers Championship. 1980 has certainly proven to be the year of the rotary.
But in 1980, we were running the RX7s. They were new then, new to everybody. And Toyota went off the road and hit the catch fencing, which was there in those days, and seriously damaged his Mazda. Even the chassis rail was in. The worst thing was the suspension. We didn't have everything that we needed. So the boys went, about 6 of them, TWR mechanics, all around the paddock, the car parks, public car parks, found a brand new RX7, poof, on it. When the guy came back after the race, there was the body shell, and all the trim, nothing else, and an engine maybe, but everything, all the running gear was gone. And a note on the dash, please contact Mazda Belgium and you will be reinstated with all your stuff. And of course you can imagine what the poor chap went through, local bloke. There was his car, his brand new sports car, and basically just a show on axle stones. Anyway, that's what the sort of thing that used to happen.